as far as Hendrick's concerned.
Let's get back to Darrell, Larry, and Mike.
Well, a lot of different strategies as we've talked since the beginning of the day. And Larry, now we got 4 new players up front because of this 2-tire situation. And the fellows who've dominated the race, they're back in the pack a bit.
Well, there's no question. The safest place is out front. And with 120 laps to go, which basically is 2 more pit stops, I think we're going to continue to see this strategy play out all the way through the end of the race. And I can't help but remember a lot what played a role in the outcome of the race last week. What went on pit road? Who had the best pit stop and who didn't make a mistake? And
Darrell, are you still driving it like you stole it, or are you a little worried about that engine and longevity? You had engine failures early, but not lately.
It's not my job to worry about the engine.
Okay.
It's my job to take advantage of 850 horsepower every time I can, and that's what I'm going to do.
All right, let's just do just that as we're getting ready for our Claret and Clear to drive. Restart, live Claret and Clear, indoors and out. Jeff Burton, Bobby Labonte, Brian Vickers, then Greg Biffle, who did get tires, then Martin Truex Jr., Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart. Green flag. Here comes Johnson.
Kind of a jukey restart there. I didn't like the way Burton brought them down. He backed them all up and got them bottlenecked up. Bobby Labonte really didn't get a good start. That opened up the outside there a little bit for some of these other cars.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson took a spot away from Jeff Gordon as they came to the flag.
Yeah, they were all bottled up there on that restart. Kind of a ragged.
Jeff Burton has 2 wins and 7 top 10s in 11 races here. He's the only driver to do the weekend sweep and win Saturday and Sunday. Finished 5th here last year, and he's out in front.
You've got Montoya up there trying to get a lap back. One was 2 laps in that 42 car. Remember, he had the problem with Clint Boyer, had to come to pit road for sheet metal damage and a tire rub.
I just haven't seen cars in quite some time that all of a sudden just snap around or take off. Like it's a real, the track and the cars are real line sensitive.
Denny Hamlin almost spun out, excuse me, Sam Hornish almost spun out off turn 2 this time, Darrell. He gathered it back in.
Same thing, Mike. He went in the corner and all of a sudden the car just almost broke loose and snapped around with him.
Boy, turn 2 has been calamity corner today.
I think it's because of those bumps down in the bottom. If you run the bottom, you hit the bumps, car kind of gets upset, and if you try to go around them, doesn't seem to be enough grip up high down there.
What about the transition from shade to sunlight coming off that corner 2? Is that a factor?
I think it is. I mean, you know, right now that whole turn is just about in the shade, so yeah, that's going to have some effect.
Yeah, because you'll have grip, then when you get on exit of turn 2, you get where the racetrack has sunlight on it, you lose that grip. But I just can't help but think about Bobby Labonte in that 96 car, the Ask.com Ford up there running second. You know, honestly, I think when the season ended last year, he had no idea where he was going to be or what he was going to be driving in 2009.
Well, he was under long-term contract to Petty Enterprises, and then that team failed to find sponsorship and ended up contracting and merging into what was Gillette Evernham, and they released Bobby from his obligation, and he found a home here. Jeff?
Mike, one thing, we've been talking about tires all day long. You know, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. 2 tires, some guys elected to stay out. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe the reason why the guys are not wanting to change these tires is on low air pressure, the cars don't hook up. We see a lot of guys getting in trouble on restarts. And it seems like when the air pressure's down low on these tires, they are definitely a handful. So maybe that's one of the reasons why we're seeing some of these guys stay out today. Their cars are so comfortable, they just feel like, hey, I got a secure set of tires. I'm going to stay up front, and I'm not going to take a chance of having a set of tires too low on air pressure and get away from them.
Hey, there's a good chance of that, Jeff, and it could be, too, that nobody has scuffs. That, you know, we heard guys talking about they like the scuff tires here. Maybe they don't have enough scuffs, and they're having to put stickers on with low air, and that's where they're having trouble.
Well, that strategy not paying off well for Martin Truex. He restarted 4th, and he's now dropped back, just hanging on to a spot in the top 10.
Well, all I know is something is ramping up because our 2 guys up there running 1-2, Jeff Burton, Bobby Labonte, they just ran the fastest lap that they've run in this race here with 104 laps to go. And I think Bobby is just slowly but surely closing in on that 31 car.
It just seems like, and it has been this way for quite a while now, if you can get out front, you can just put a lot of distance between the rest of the field.
3 wide down the front straightaway. Carl Edwards in that 99 car all the way down on the apron as he races Tony Stewart in the 14. This is a battle for 8th.
I'm still pretty impressed with Truex riding around here early in the day with an axle hanging out of the car, and here he is running in 10th place. Pretty good recovery for that group.
He caught a caution just
right, yeah.
Edwards completes the pass of Stewart for 8th place and sets off after Kyle Busch. Up front, Jeff Burton, Bobby Labonte, and Brian Vickers. Those 3 drivers have about a second and a half. Or excuse me, Jimmy Johnson, Burton, Labonte, Johnson. Those drivers have a second and a half on the rest of the field. Here is Vickers in 6th place.
See, he started 43rd.
Yeah, Mike, he's in 6th, but that team is very concerned. They have lost voltage. They're not sure how much electrical power they're going to have. It's been a concern for a while now on that 83.
And how they got the track position. Ryan Pemberton, one of those crew chiefs on that last stop, that elected to go with just 2 right side tires to try to get him up there.
Krista, the 1 keeps dropping back. What's the problem with Truex?
Yeah, and just when we mentioned that he'd climbed back up into the top 10, they're thinking maybe a loose wheel. Martin talked about a vibration. Right now, he's talking right now. He's not sure if it's a vibration from a loose wheel or a brake issue, but there's a lot of talk right now in the 1 camp.
Just remember, it could be some damage from that axle coming out earlier, causing him to have some kind of problem with that left rear back there.
I would say that could be a strong possibility.
Maybe a drive plate or something that's about ready to shear.
2nd place, Jimmy Johnson working his way back toward the front. Got a few positions behind because they took on 4 tires on their last stop. Now he moves to 2nd place.
I'd say Jimmy Johnson is singing that old song, "You Haven't Heard the Last of Me."
Here's a Vegas-related question from the FoxAtAsk.com. Which NASCAR drivers appeared in the Elvis film Speedway? Elvis, Nancy Sinatra, Bill Bixby in that movie. And one of the cars in that movie was a Shelby Cobra. And it's on display over here at the Shelby Museum. That's not the answer. You'll have to go to Ask.com to find out. And to enter the Ask.com NASCAR Challenge to win daily prizes or a trip to Talladega.
Me and Hammond tried out for it, but we didn't make it. All we ended up with was 2 wigs.
Jeff Burton used pit stop strategy to get to the front of the field. How long can he hold on to the lead?
Right front, Martin said, hey, if you're smelling gear oil, why would my brakes be failing? Right now, he said he cannot hold on to it. Feels like the wheel is going to fall off.
And
they're going to come back in.
Chris, it took them a long time on the right rear, like they maybe were looking for a leak or a problem on the right rear.
Truex came in here 17th in points. He's now 2 laps down.
Just watching the 48 car and the 31 car of Jeff Burton, who's leading this race. Jimmy right now in the 48 is about a tenth and a half a lap better than the 31 car.
Yeah, he's closing in on him. They got to be pretty happy with that 48 car coming in here today, and kind of a little bit of concern about the setup that they had. 1 car back on pit road, by the way. But the 48's been very consistent, run good all day long, and I think he's the guy that they're going to have to worry about.
But he's only begun to run Burton down in about the last 5 laps. Jeff Burton was holding about a 9/10 of a second advantage, and now really bringing that advantage down. Jimmy Johnson coming back to the front. But what a nice turnaround for Jeff Burton, whose first 2 races ended up with 28th and 32nd place finishes, Steve.
Hey, Mike, just wanted to add on Jimmy Johnson. Chad Canal said this morning that was going to be part of their strategy. They were going to have to compromise and give up the beginning of the run to be good much later in the run.
Lesson learned from last week, I would say.
And that car's really come on. 9th place, Dale Jr. around the outside of Tony Stewart. As when Pablo Montoya comes to the pit, along with Brad Keselowski.
Not surprised to see Tony Stewart running right around the bottom of the racetrack. About everywhere we go, that's where you'll see him, just like right here down in 1 and 2. Not surprised to see Dale Earnhardt Jr., who we're riding with, pretty much up the racetrack. That's where he'll normally run.
Keep digging, man. Nobody coming. Nice lap here. Good job.
Very different lines, different approaches to this racetrack. Carl Edwards, last year's winner here, coming back into the picture. He is now up to 6th place, Matt, about 4.3 seconds off the lead.
Would probably appreciate a caution about this time, Mike, not to try to fix his race car, but to try to close up that 5-second gap between himself and leader Jeff Burton. The last 10 laps or so, he's been 2 to 3 tenths faster than anyone else in front of him in scoring. Edwards said the car was a little too free at the beginning of this run, but now it's come in nicely. Krista?
The 39 is in. The last thing that Ryan Newman had said, he thought he had a vibration. He said it was shaking very bad in the corners. You see the crew around on the right side coming over to the left side, but again, more shaking going on the racetrack.
Sounds like an Elvis song. Shake, rattle, and roll, baby.
Whole Jerry Lewis.
Oh, that's
the
right.
killer.
You're right.
Whole lot of shaking going on.
Whole lot of shaking.
Well, not the kind you want to hear from your race car.
That pit stop comes probably about 15 laps before all of our leaders will be on pit road should we stay green. So right now, by my calculation, should we stay green, we should be on pit road somewhere between lap 215 and 220, and then somewhere probably about 15 laps to go, we'd have to make a final pit stop.
Which we wouldn't have last year because this race was only 400 miles.
It would have been over.
But it's 18 laps longer this year. And Tony Stewart's headed for pit road.
Better get her slowed down, buddy.
So Stewart pits out of 10th place.
Right side, just right side.
And it'll be the first of the leaders to hit pit road in this sequence.
Got a battle for the lead up here side by side. Looks like Jeff Burton in the 31 gets pinned behind Scott Speed in that 82 car. Oh. Now Johnson gets pinned behind him.
So Burton has the lead. We go to Matt and Stewart's pit.
Stewart, the mic came in a little earlier than they had expected. He said, guys, we have to come now. We've got a loose wheel. They called for right sides only.
Now within 2 laps, teammates both had a vibration with what they thought was a loose wheel. Newman and then Stewart.
And don't forget Truex, who had that big vibration problem, but now that's cured. He's back out on the racetrack.
Definitely makes you go,
Jeff Burton now back up to 0.7 of a second ahead of Jimmy Johnson, Bobby Labonte, Greg Biffle, Jeff Gordon. When will the leaders hit? 211 laps complete. We expect the rest of the leaders. Tony Stewart's been in. We expect the rest of the leaders on pit road within the next 5 or 6 laps, unless they try to stretch it out and make this a 1 pit stop race. Larry, you and Jeff, how about hashing this out? Do you need to make 2 stops, or can you make it on 1?
Well, Jeff, if this thing keeps its green flag look, obviously you want to make 1 less stop than your competitors. You and I were talking during break. All of the leaders, most of the leaders were on pit road at lap 165. We did have that 1 caution between 171 and 175 that buys you a little bit of time, but you're going to have to go to about lap 229 if you want to make it a 1-stop race.
You're right, Larry, and I think that's where the gamble is going to kind of come into play right now. Is you got to figure out, what's been going as far as your tires. The tires have been doing really well today. So now all of a sudden, can you throttle back a little bit and stretch it to the point where you can go to maybe about lap maybe 225 or something like that, and then stretch that final run to the 285 mark? Because now, bear in mind, green, white checker, you're done. But the key thing right now is if you could put yourself in a pretty good position to maybe steal the race, because the rest of these guys would have to make an extra stop.
That's the way I'd start thinking right now. How can I do something different than everybody else is going to do?
Get on a totally different agenda right now.
Right.
You're right.
Give me an advantage.
Yep.
Jeff Burton continues to lead, 0.7 of a second up on Jimmy Johnson, and Max Pappas has returned to the race after spending some time in the garage.
So is the 2 car, by the way. They whatever was wrong with it, they repaired it, and he's back out on the racetrack.
Let's check with Matt.
Tony, Tony Stewart in conversations back and forth between Darian Grubb at this moment, talking about bringing the car back to pit road since the vibration has actually gotten worse. He was wondering when the cycle begins, whether they could try to hold out till then. At this point, Darian Grubb told the driver, it's up to you. You come when you feel like you need to. Steve.
Matt, a lot of concern down here in the Greg Biffle pits. They have already switched ignition boxes, and remember, wasn't that long ago, Greg Biffle said he was being cautious with this engine. He's said or described the motor as surging.
Steve, he's lost a lot of positions here just recently, and he's quite a bit off from what those leaders are running right now.
And surging, it probably means it's broken a valve spring, because that's kind of the feel you first get. The engine doesn't run exactly up to snuff, and it'll start doing a little surge because it's losing power.
And I think just to update our viewers, his teammate Matt Kenseth, who came in here trying to win 3 races in a row, the first 3 races of 2009, out with engine failure before lap 10. And then David Reagan, another Roush car, out just a few laps after that with engine failure. So 2 Roush Fenway cars already out with earlier engine failure.
So we have 68 laps to go, 25 cars on the lead lap, at least 1 and perhaps 2 pit stops in the offing. And Jeff Burton, tell you, when Burton took those 2 tires, I don't think a lot of folks expected him to be able to hold the lead and hold off everyone who got 4 tires, but Jeff Burton's done a great job leading this race.
And that's a sign of a good handling race car.
Great car, and you see look at his hands down in there. I mean, he's got a nice tug to the left. That's the way Burton drives. He likes to really crank that thing hard left. That's kind of old school, both hands pulling down to the left. But it's also, let me tell you the other thing I think they did really well here. The guys that they used to do the tire test here, 4 of the best, and they've gotten the best tires I think they could have possibly had for here.
15th place David Stremme comes onto pit road. He and Tony Stewart, the only lead lap cars to pit so far under green this time, Kristen.
David Stremme having another great race. 4 tires and fuel, the call for the Penske Championship Racing Machine. 1.5 rounds out of the left rear.
Here comes Kevin Harvick onto pit road. And this should start the round of green flag pit stops in earnest. Back to Krista.
Right now, Kevin Harvick saying that his car is terrible in traffic. He needs it to turn better. How are they going to do it? Todd Berrier and Kevin Harvick deciding it's a track bar adjustment. That's the call for Kevin Harvick.
Sam Hornish is in. Tony Stewart is in.
Jeff Gordon missed pit road. Jeff Gordon in the 24 car was coming to pit road and missed it.
Jimmy Johnson's in. Greg Biffle's in.
Tough pit road to get on, man. I'm just telling you, one of the hardest.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. is also in. Steve.
Mike, just heard Jimmy Johnson say, I can't get back to the gas like I want to. It's gotten a little bit tight late in the run, and caution is out.
Jeff Gordon cannot get back up to speed.
He blew a tire.
He's the reason for the caution. Yes,
I think he slid the tire.
Yeah. He locked it up, Mike, and slid that left front tire and blew it out.
We got to come this time. Come early this time.
And then the 48 slid to his pit box.
Let's show you what happens here to Gordon.
Watch, he locks it down. Can't get it woed up.
You could see the smoke coming off of it right there.
I think he was watching the 48 car, and I think that was a big distraction to him. Now watch what the 48 does. He comes around the 77. Hello.
Yikes.
And this is all happening under green. The caution had not yet come out.
Now, did Jeff Gordon, of course, when that tire's locked up, it's no longer capable of turning the car.
Yeah.
When it's locked. I wonder if that's when the tire went flat or if it happened down in turn 1.
Well, he flat spotted it, Mike, coming down here to try to get on pit road. And then when he went on back around, it blew it out.
We got our leaders in 3 and 4, Jeff Burton in particular. He was down on the apron because we were right up against those green flag stops.
Go.
These cars are about out of fuel.
Well, here comes Burton onto pit road with Bobby Labonte.
What a break for these guys, though, to get that caution before they made their green flag stops.
Carl Edwards right behind them. The first 3 coming in nose to tail. Kevin Harvick and Tony Stewart too fast entering the pits. There's Jamie McMurray and Clint Boyer's stop. Dick?
Well, Jamie McMurray's crew is going to get him a minor chassis adjustment. McMurray has been very silent on the radio, has not said much about the behavior of his car. He had been running 10th. Steve.
Dick, the 96 car in the upper right box. Chassis adjustments, 4 tires, half round out of the right rear, half round in the left rear, Matt.
And no changes for the 31 of Jeff Burton. Meanwhile, the 99 of Carl Edwards, they went back about a quarter of a pound in the right rear. He says the car very strong through the meat of the run.
Now, Jeff Burton is the first car off pit road. I'm not sure if he got lefts or if he got a full set of 4 tires. We will check.
Oh, what they're doing to the 29.
A lot of work on Kevin Harvick's car. Caution for the 11th time today in Las Vegas. A lot has happened in the last few minutes under this caution, and yes, Jeff Burton did get 4 tires. He is still the leader. Look at Jimmy Johnson coming onto pit road in the upper left, and Johnson coming into his pit and overshooting. This is under green. Jeff Gordon trying to get into the pits with Johnson, locking up the left rear, missing the commit cone, having to go around and blowing out the tire. That brings the caution out, so Jeff Burton can pit under yellow, and Jimmy Johnson, having to back up, put those 2 tires on, lost a lap in the process.
As I look at Jeff Gordon, he was trying to follow the 48 on the pit road, but also if you look behind him, he had cars right on his back bumper. He had to get down off the racetrack a little faster than he probably wanted to.
Don't let that 48 come without us. Jeff, if you see that 48 pitting, we need to be on pit road with him. Pit, this lap, this lap.
And that's when Gordon locked up the tire trying to get onto pit road. Also, Carl Edwards was missing a lug nut when he left pit road and had to come back into the pits to install it, so he'll be at the tail end of the lead lap when we restart.
Yeah, we had all types of penalties going on that sequence of green flag stops, and there you see the repair work on Jeff Gordon's number 24 car. Steve Letarte,
One out of the
crew
left
chief.
to put a half in the right rear.
You know, yesterday, Larry, there were unbelievable amount of pit road penalties yesterday, and Jeff and I were looking at a list this morning. Jeff, how many penalties were there yesterday?
Darrell, what I had counted here, there were 32 situations that were related to pit road, from exceeding, entering, pit road speed, entering and exiting, commitment line violations, pitting before pit road was open, too many crew members over pit road. I mean, it's just a multitude of issues that seem like for some reason are just jumping up this year, and I think it's all because everybody's feeling the pressure of the competition, both in the Nationwide Series and especially here in the Sprint Cup Series. They know they've got to get the job done. Drivers are trying too hard, like Greg Biffle, Jimmy Johnson. They're coming in too hard. And then all of a sudden the guys on pit road themselves making mistakes, just like Carl Edwards' crew leaving a lug nut off, trying to be fast. So a lot of pressure down there on pit road to make it happen.
Here's a look at some of the drivers, all of the drivers who have had pit road infractions, from speeding to missing lug nuts, etc. David Gilliland got the free pass, so he'll be the 17th car on the lead lap when we go back to green. 1 lap down will be Jimmy Johnson, the reigning Sprint Cup champion. And Larry, the big question, can they go the distance from here, or will they have to stop again?
I believe we're going to have some that can stretch it. We're going to get this restart with about 58 laps to go. That's just right there outside the